Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
I'm telling you, I'm like a monkey. I see my image and I start smiling at it. There's something very, very animalistic about that. You see pets looking at their images in mirrors and they get all excited. It's like, I know it's just an image of me, but look, there I am. Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. This is a show I've actually wanted to do for a very, very long time. But finding the right person to do it is critical. This whole idea of histamines and diets that illicit histamine response actually I first witnessed as a very young man in my late teens, early 20s, when I was out at a seafood restaurant. And I'm sure my guest, Shawn Bean, when he comes on in a second, will. In fact, let me bring him on now. Let me just do something. Hold on, Shawn. How you doing, Shawn?
I'm doing fine today. And yourself, Carl?
Good. I'm trying to get you on the. Why is this not working? There we go. That's better. So, this whole discussion about histamines actually happened to me as a very young man. I was at a seafood restaurant in New York, and we were all having a good time. A bunch of us young guys, and there was a guy at another table. I didn't know anything about him, but he was eating raw clams, as all we were. You know, that's a big thing. You're from the East Coast, you know what I mean. Raw clams on the half shell, they're fantastic. And all of a sudden, this guy went into anaphylactic shock. I didn't know it was anaphylactic shock back then, but his lips swelled up, he couldn't breathe, and they had to call an ambulance, and they rushed him off, and I don't know what happened to him. And so we were like, what was that? The waiter said, some people get a histamine response from eating raw shellfish if they're allergic to them. And that's probably what that was. And I tucked it away. I never thought about it again. And then fast forward to the past decade or two, I start hearing more and more about histamine responses, but not to the degree where they got to rush you off to the hospital, but just to the point where you drink some red wine and all of a sudden your face gets really flush. I know a lot of women who are postmenopausal who say, you know, I can't drink red wine anymore. When I drink red wine, my face gets all red. Never happened before. And this is, in fact, a signature of a histamine response, is it not?
That would definitely be a signature of histamine response, but it's also got to do with the immunological adaptations that are affecting the gene expressions that have to deal with histamines. When dealing with histamines, estrogen is one of the major drivers that help to precipitate histomimetic responses, because a lot of women during their cycle, they often tend to have what looks like elevated histamine levels when it's actually just the rise of the estrogen impacting the enzyme that breaks down histamine.
Okay, so wait, I want to dig a little deeper now. Okay, hold on. So in the case of one of my friends who, when she drinks red wine, that she gets all red and flush, and she said she can't drink red wine anymore. Are you saying that's because the estrogen is not there to blunt the histamine response, or is her current low estrogen actually causing an overproduction of histamine?
The high estrogens, or estrogen balance, or estrogen dominance, and as you know, we can be estrogen dominance not just from the actual levels, but rather from the metabolites, such as the 4-hydroxyesterones and the alteration between the 2 and 16-hydroxyesterones. There's so many women that have postmenopausal that they're like, well, I have low estrogen, but you're also estrogen dominant at the same time. That's the typical scenario that we see in a lot of these women that have these reactions, is that they're low estrogen, but their metabolites are off. And this can cause a lot of the histomimetic responses. This is why when working with these type of cases, I always try to recommend broccoli seed extracts or because it helps to lower the 4-hydroxyesterone, which actually the broccoli seed extracts are a backdoor to helping with histaminic reactions itself.
Okay, wait a minute. So now let's talk about estrone for a second. This is how I do things. I have a little ADHD, and so when you say something that's interesting, I go, "Ooh, I'm like the dog who sees a squirrel. Squirrel. Oh, squirrel." So estrone is in modern HRT practices. Estrone is now being called the old women's or the old ladies' hormone. Estrone is being associated with endometrial thickening and fibroids and so on. So it sounds to me like estrone is a big culprit here, not necessarily estradiol or estriol, but it's in fact the estrone. Am I correct about that?
What happens is when you look at the metabolic pathways, Carl, E1, E2 go back and forth. And a lot of times it's the conversion of one being pushed to the other. So the end result is the downstream metabolites. And as you know, a lot of women are given testosterone replacement therapy via pellets. And oftentimes we see increased, they may feel good, but next thing you know, it's like you get multiple cases of, increased vaginal bleeding. And, because what happens when you implant the testosterone, it has a higher probability to convert into the estrogens, estradiol and estrone. And when they're implanting those pellets, they're not looking at the downstream metabolites, which are a lot genetically are being altered into the wrong pathway.
Okay, so and I don't want to get too far off into the HRT realm because I want to get back into the histamine diets, but you can't really talk about this without talking about hormonal milus. We know that long-acting esters in men of testosterone have a higher conversion to estradiol, higher aromatization. So if you use propionate, it has a half-life of a day and a half, 2 days, very, very little conversion to estradiol, and shift all the way up to cypionate and anthate and even decoinate. As you go to these longer acting esters, you see a much more pronounced production of estradiol in men. And I'm starting to come to the conclusion that it's because the further you go from the natural pulsatile nature of testosterone, the greater the deviation of these other hormonal cascades. Is that accurate? Because now when we talk about the pellet, we're talking about 6 months, 3 months of continuous testosterone infusion.
And, I've seen women's testosterone levels up into the 250s and 275 ranges 4 weeks after implantations. And, their estrogen levels, then they're on multiple creams. But you are absolutely correct. What I've seen in my clinical experiences working with doctors' cases, we find that a lot of people are doing EOD injections with lower testosterone, and they're finding that it causes a higher trough and a much lower peak. So you're more getting into a more physiological dosage to where you're not swinging from 300 nanograms to deciliter to 1,600 to 1,700 over a 2-week period, which was additional. And what this does is this puts a major stress on the aromatase activity, which in males, more so in females, I've seen associated with histaminic responses, because as we know that estrogens have to go get broken down. And one of those mechanisms that they can affect, if not broken down, is called the DAO enzyme. The diamine enzyme called Diamine Oxidase is one of the major enzymes that helps us break down histamines alone. So we know that histamines drive estrogens and estrogens drive histamines. So if our estrogen gets too high, it impacts this enzyme, and this makes us more prone to histaminic responses, which could
where are histamines produced? In the gut?
They're produced pretty much, a lot of them are produced in the gut, absolutely. And food selection has a huge impact on the body's response to histamines as a major source.
Okay, so we know that the immune system is in the gut. We know that inflammation is the army of the immune system. And it makes sense that histamines would be produced in the gut. And this is why when people eat certain foods, the response is so fast. I mean, you don't even have to digest it. It hits your gut, and all of a sudden, you're starting to get that allergic reaction. So that makes sense. You mentioned diamine oxidase. Is that what you said? That actually helps to blunt the histaminic response?
Correct. If a person's have what we call histamine intolerance, usually given diamine oxidase with a meal actually helps to lower.
That was my next question. Can you take diamine oxidase? You can.
Yes, diamine oxidases are produced by multiple different companies.
Over the counter? Are they over the counter type things?
They're completely over the counter. Absolutely. They're relatively very expensive, and the suggestions that I do from there is a lot of practitioners will put people on this for 9 months at somewhere a cost of $100 to $120 per month. I normally recommend people get a bottle and then gradually ramp up on them between 1 to 2 a day. And if you don't get any response, don't go any further, because they're usually pretty quick when this happens. But as we know, going back to the gut, one of the major contributing factors of histamic responses in the gut is actually dysbiosis. A dysbiotic gut will put excessive stress on your body's ability on histamines. And a lot of times reducing and bringing the gut flora back into balance has a huge impact on body's ability to handle histamines appropriately.
Okay, so it sounds to me like if you take these diamine oxidase supplements over a period of time, you can stop taking them. Did I understand that right?
What you do is you give a trial. If you give a trial, what happens is that's if you are going to respond to them or not. They're not like hydrochloric acid to where the body starts producing them on their own.
Right.
The problem is a lot of practitioners or clients that I run into, I look at them, I look at their supplements, I said, how long have you been on diamine oxidase for? They're like 6 months. I said, do you feel anything? No. I said,
so why are you taking them? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
As we know, a lot of practitioners, they put them on supplements and they don't leave them. Same way like PPIs. You do a post surgery, for an elderly person. What do they do? Like my father, they put him on PPIs, gave him like a 3-month supply, and they didn't tell him to stop after, 4 or 5 weeks after surgery. So here's my father popping, PPIs as a protective mechanism, which is, fine short term, but he would continue on them for months and not stop.
And they're horrible. They're horrible. They've been linked to so many bad outcomes now. It's ridiculous. And you can buy them over the counter, thanks to Larry, the cable guy. But anyway, so are there certain foods that lend themselves to histamine release that we can pretty much say, okay, if you are someone sensitive to histamine, before we fix your gut, before we do that, you need to stop eating these insulting foods?
Let me bring this up for your listeners that are the gym goers and that are think they're doing wonderful things for preparing their meals. What we found is after 24 hours, if your food's been left in the refrigerator, histamines can significantly increase. I had a lot of bodybuilders and fitness competitors that I worked with that couldn't lose weight, and they wonder one of the reasons why. When I looked at their genetics and I look at their metabolic pathways and their, the actual gene expressions, they had a histamine intolerance. And by them preparing their meals and eating them, 4 or 5 days after they've been cooked, because everybody told us as bodybuilders, prepare your feed for the week, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Sundays and Wednesdays.
Sundays and Wednesdays. But the thing is if you leave that food and you have a histamine intolerance or an imbalance in histamine pathways, 24 hours after that food's been sitting in the refrigerator, your histamine, the natural.
Okay, now, but wait a minute. Is it the cooking and refrigerating, or is it the fact that they're storing these things in plastic containers? And if it's the latter, are we talking about xenohistamines now, or are we talking about, because there's xenoestrogens in plastics, are we talking about xenohistamine?
Well, do you remember that estrogens increase systemic responses. So that's a good plausible theory.
Okay.
I have not seen any kind of data on that yet. I just know that when I recommend, when working with bodybuilders and competitors and fit gym goers, I always tell them, listen, if you're going to store food in the fridge, keep it in glass containers, just because the fact that the plastic could potentially leak potentially leach, but also try to consume it within 24 hours. And what I found from the people that are histaminic sensitive, depending upon what they store it in, I don't think the estrogens are as big of a player as the food being kept in the refrigerator and not eaten fresh.
And so it really could just be the fact that you're cooking it and leaving it in the fridge. It doesn't necessarily have to be the contact of the plastic, or do you feel confident that it's the contact of the plastic?
I think it could be a strong contributing factors. I just have not seen any kind of research on that yet.
No one's looking at this, obviously.
Nobody's looking at this, but just as safety mechanisms, just as, in my practice, I try to cover all bases, try to cover all bases, so that we don't leave any kind of variable out that could be affecting.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. So, but now let's talk about food categories as well.
Okay.
So, can we say things like, well, nightshades seem to precipitate a greater histamine response in people who are sensitive to histamine?
That could be, yes, tomatoes, nightshades, but we also have food categories such as alcohol, fermented foods, such as if you're doing kefir, kimchi, and preparing those fermented foods that are really, really good for the gut. They're also extremely high for histamines too. And if you have dysbiosis on top of that, you're getting a added insult. Another mechanisms are a lot of people like smoked foods. Okay, smoked salmon.
Yeah, I don't eat smoked foods anymore. You know why? Simple critical thinking. There is particulate matter embedded in that flesh. I don't want to eat the wood. I don't want to eat the burning wood. I don't want to eat the burning wood in my meat.
And that would be that's from the PAHs that actually stress the 4-hydroxyesterone, which makes people predisposition to estrogen dominance. If another factor, sidebarring from that, is people that love to cook on grills, and they hear that, as soon as you cook that steak and hear that, everybody goes, yay. That's actually carcinogenic. That's altering your 4-hydroxyesterone.
Well, aren't we also, when we talk about smoke foods and we talk about high heat cooking, aren't we actually ingesting AGEs at that point in time? Aren't we literally mainlining advanced glycation end products from that heat process? Or in the case of smoked foods, those particles of smoke that are actually being embedded, those are AGEs too, right?
Absolutely, they could be classified them. Then on top of that, with smoked foods, you got the increase in histamines. Okay, the other one you mentioned was also shellfish. Another classification is beans, legumes.
Really? But they're so healthy. But they're so healthy for you.
Well, and then you got then you have girl's best friend, chocolate. Chocolate is one of the major histamine, not just histamines, but also oxalate foods that you deal with. Vinegar is another one. And then our nemesis, wheat, tomatoes, and also citrus may be another challenge too.
But when we talk about citrus, can we tease out the chemical influences in conventional agriculture and the actual intrinsic effects of a citrus fruit? Or we can't really, right?
We really can't, because if you have a female that's got interstitial cystitis, and a lot of that stuff is driven by histamines. By controlling the histamines, you actually control the interstitial cystitis. So any kind of citrus may be irritating to this enzyme, whether it's natural or unnatural occurring. Same way with tomatoes. Tomatoes are natural occurring, and they have histamines too. So just as default, I remove all those foods out of the person's, or just decrease them, and then eventually remove them out of the diet just to see how the people respond.
Jason Lalou says something. He says a question. He says, we evolved with wood-fired foods, no? Until we could forge steel and had pipe gas. But that doesn't make it good for us. There's a large movement of raw food eaters. I did shows a decade ago with Josh Trentin and Randy Roach talking about raw food eating raw meat. There are a lot of things that we have done. Look at the 40,000 year ago decision to start an agricultural environment where we would grow stuff and save it all year long, which really didn't work well. But my point is, just because that's what we had doesn't mean it's good for the human condition.
No, and he brings up a valid point, and so do you, is, when I sit in my fireplace, I have fire and I have wood. But unfortunately, because of my genetic pathway, my acetylation pathway gets jammed up. Those off-gassing from the wood, even though it's natural from the outside, that still clogs up my system and can still overburden the.
Uh-oh, we have a frozen camera. Thank you, wireless internet. Oh, there we go. He's coming back now. Can you hear me?
So basically, yeah, I can hear you.
Good. Okay, good.
So basically what I was saying is even though that we sit by the fireplace in our houses burning wood, that's giving off aldehydes. And aldehydes have to go through the NAT pathway with the acetylation pathway to get broken down. And the acetylation pathway is one of the main factors by which you are breaking down histamines. As I alluded to, a mutual client of ours, so to speak, I refer to as the NAT pathway as the drunky pants genes, because as soon as I saw that pathway being highly lit, I asked the questions. I said, do you tend to get drunk very easily on alcohol? And the female responded, yes, I do. I can't drink alcohol like I used to. And that's one of the pathways that gets backed up through there. So alcohol impacts that NAT pathway, which also increases the demand or reduces the body's ability to take care of the histamines in the first place.
Let's answer this other question from Darcy Clark. He says he seems to remember reading somewhere that there's a hormetic response to grilling meat. Any thoughts on that? But see, hormesis implies that we develop a benefit, right? I mean, I don't know that there is anything beneficial about grilling meat except that it's socially unacceptable and it's hygienically a problem to eat raw meat today unless you are killing the animals yourself. But what you believe there's a hormetic effect to grilling meat?
I don't have the expertise to comment on that at all.
Yeah.
So what I would say is if you're grilling in general, you are increasing you're increasing carcinogenic exposure, which has been proven, and you are stressing and potentially putting your CYP1B1 gene expression on demand, which goes for the 4-hydroxyesterone pathway. So, and we know that 4-hydroxyesterone is the one that is the major problematic one in regards to the DNA. We once thought the 2 and 16-hydroxy were the major contributors. And that's not turning out to be so true anymore. It's the 4-hydroxy that has stronger of the DNA change.
Let's talk about this, and then we're going to take a break. Acetaldehyde is the culprit that is blamed for alcohol's effects on the brain and also the effects on feeling hungover the next day. Mm-hmm. Is that in fact true? Is it the acetyl alcohol and doesn't acetyl L-carnitine have the ability to kind of quench that and keep you from getting hungover?
The hangover cure. The Hangover Cure is associated with a mineral called molybdenum. Molybdenum was discovered by the result of molybdenum was discovered accidentally in my own experience for the Hangover Cure was when my wife decided to go on her bachelorette party, and now as a result of that she carries molybdenum everywhere she goes as she goes out partying. Because what happens is they found that if you take molybdenum, it actually is one of the cofactors for the alcohol dehydrogenase pathway. And we always joke about being the Hangover Cure. And I think I mentioned this to a mutual person during our consult, is, you can take molybdenum after you get done drinking. And I even gave it to a guy out at the bar who was stone drunk, who couldn't even walk and was trying to drive home. I said, take about 500 micrograms to 1 milligram.
Because that's a metal. Is it not a metal?
Well, what it does is it's one of the major cofactors for it's a trace mineral.
Yes.
Which our body requires a certain amount, and it works on the NAT pathway is broken down by thiamine, which is B1. It's broken down by B5, which is pantothenic acid, and it's also supports the pathway is molybdenum. But I found that when you have that hangover, molybdenum is probably the best hangover cure. And also, if you can get your hands on glutathione and you're able to tolerate it, glutathione also helps to push the alcohol out for those people who can handle it appropriately.
Interesting.
And the molybdenum actually helps the glutathione recycle itself so it stays in its proper form. Because a lot of the times, you're dealing with, if you drink wine, you're dealing with sulfur. Well, if you're molybdenum deficient, you're not going to break down sulfur. Whether it comes from broccoli, cauliflower, leeks, onions, garlic, and this is going back to that infamous CBS pathway we talk about. And believe it or not, the NAT pathway and the CBS pathway are directly interconnected through molybdenum. So by taking care of the NAT pathway, you actually, with the acetylation pathway, you actually address this sulfuration pathway in the process. And the link to that is the molybdenum. And this has been a tried and true experiment, because I've actually given molybdenum to people who were drinking, and they noticed they had to drink considerably more to get a buzz.
This is really interesting. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the histamine response, and we'll also list all the things that you think people who have an unusual histamine response need to look at, both supplemental and as well as their own physiology. We'll talk about that as we get a little bit further into the show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio.
Wanting to try CBD but not sure what to trust? Check out H-Hemp. H, like healthy, happy, honest. H-Hemp CBD system makes it simple with one CBD tincture, available in 3 great tasting flavors, a super powerful breath spray that GQ magazine named a top CBD product, and a topical CBD balm that is simply the bomb. Relax and feel better naturally with the H-Hemp CBD system, available at hhemp.com.
Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Broomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ads today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Are you looking for a better way to absorb the nutrients you know you need? Do what I do and start your day with lipospheric supplements from LivOn Labs. Unlike pills and powders, LivOn's patented liposomal encapsulation technology transports nutrients like vitamin C, vitamin B, glutathione, acetyl L-carnitine, and alpha-lipoic acid to where they need to be, your cells. Visit try.livonlabs.com/Carl to learn why I take these supplements every day to help me perform in the gym and in life. That's try.livonlabs.com/Carl.
Men and women, you've heard about hormone optimization. Do you feel like it's something you want to look into? RenewLifeRx.com is the place to start. Their doctors can help you with the solutions. RenewLifeRx.com has a simple process for lab work, consultation, and taking a deep dive into where your hormone levels can be improved. Superhuman Radio listeners get 30% off your initial lab work and consultation. Go to RenewLifeRx.com to schedule your no-obligation phone consultation today. Feel younger, get in better shape, and be more productive at RenewLifeRx.com.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
So we have a very funny exchange happening in the audience here. People are suggesting that just don't stop drinking. Jason LaLue said, I was told to just stay drunk and you don't have to deal with it, meaning a hangover. And of course, Darcy Clark thinks that's hilarious. And Jason LaLue is actually watching the show in between doing farmers walks with a portable generator during the commercial breaks. Well, we are going to have more commercial breaks now, just for you, Jason, so that you could do more farmers walks. Because you know I love farmers walks. Okay, so is it the sulfates in the wine that cause the histaminic response to red wine? Because there's women who can drink white wine all day long and get nothing, but they drink red wine and they get hit hard.
You also have to consider about the quality of the wine. A lot of people, there's low sulfites, and then I just got back from a conference and I just made everybody's day. There's actually products out there that you can get at your local alcohol store where they sell wine that actually deactivates the sulfites in them.
Really? How does it do that?
It somehow changes it to some inert form. I learned about this trick from a colleague of mine from Australia. When I look at the ingredients, I think the one that she was taking was just food grade hydrogen peroxide, and somehow converts the sulfite into a hydrogen sulfate, moves it into some kind of hydrogen sulfate gas. So it kind of like burns it off. But the ones that we use, they're like little tiny wands that you dip into the wine, and it removes the sulfites out of it. And
so are the sulfites in fact the culprits? Is that why women can drink white wine but not red wine? Do they put sulfites in white wine? I don't even know.
I'm not familiar that they do. I know. I really don't. But you also have to remember too is the red wine also, there are a lot of tannins. You've got glyphosates now. That are found in a lot of wines because being sprayed. So that's why I always, if you go to the wine store, I always recommend organic, low sulfates,
absolutely,
if possible. And
there's plenty of organic wines out there. In fact, there started out being some table wines for $9 to $13 a bottle that are organic, but now Gingrich Hills, which is a leader in fine wine, has an organic wine line that they're producing, and Gingrich Hills is a very, very expensive wine. So more and more people are getting it. Listen, oh, wait a minute, wrong question. People are asking questions faster than I can get to them here. So where the heck did it go? Darcy Clark had a question about MTHFR. Here it is. Let's get this up there. So he wants to know what you think about the importance of working on one's SNPs, like the MTHFR, DAO, MAO, and others, how important those are in this discussion. Wireless internet. We'll wait for him to come back. I don't know if you can hear me, but your camera has frozen. Let's give Darcy a minute. Well, Darcy, I don't know if we're going to get your questions answered because I feel like we may have lost. Yeah, he'll have to reconnect. Let's just sit tight. We'll get this question answered. He'll just reconnect. Let me text him and tell him to reconnect. This is what you see here is what I try not to do wireless. But the reality is it's a everybody's got wireless internet today, and very few people have Ethernet. And sometimes I'll say, look, we need Ethernet connection. They're like, I don't have one. So let's just see if he can reconnect real quick. But this is a good question. I have a feeling he's going to say it's very important. I think that's what his primary role is in his practice, is to look at people's SNPs and then decipher what they have a propensity for. Here he comes. Here he comes. Here he comes. Let's add him right to the broadcast. Add him right back. We'll just pick up. Hold on a second, Shawn. We'll just pick up where we left off, Shawn. And you're on the other side now. That's fine. So what do you think? Are those SNPs important? That's really the basis of your practice, right? Don't you interpret those things for people and say, you have a propensity for this?
Yeah, well, the MAL A, it would be not the MAL B, but the MAL A. What happens is histamines get broken down by MAL A, and also the same mechanism that breaks down histamines also break down serotonin. So if you have excess of histamines, your serotonin metabolism is going to be off too. That's why we see a lot of autistic kids with high levels of 5-HIAA in their urine, because they have excessive amount of histamines to where it can't break it down properly. So absolutely, histamines and serotonin have a direct relationship. Histamines and also GAD can also be a problem. Histamines and COMT can be a problem because histamines also increase epinephrine, norepinephrine, which are necessary for the COMT gene to be broken down pathway, which has to do with the catecholamine pathway. Histamines also go through the GAD, which is the glutamate GAD pathway. So yeah, histamines can be a really major biochemical disruptor on multiple pathways. MTHFR, again, you want to not get in that caveat to where we get trapped into, oh my God, I have MTHFR. You got to pull yourself back and look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture would be methylation status in general. And a lot of people's methylation systems are impaired because they're actually downregulated as a response to a cell danger response, as a protective mechanism. So sometimes when methylation is actually low, it's trying to tell us something that, hey, if I push glutathione, it's going to go into its oxidized form and not get recycled. So whenever I have a complex medical case, I put a kibosh on the methylation and just work on the support system, because I found that through years and years working with complex cases, when everybody was pushing the methylation system, I was the one to go against the grain and say, guys, we got to stop this. And after about 7 years, that has been the current trend that we're starting to see, where methylation needs to be supported and not pushed. And also, methylation is one of the mechanisms by which COMT breaks down the histamines. And we know that SAMe can be a positive and a negative thing. It can either increase the problem or it can act at breaking down the problem. And then with the DAO is driven by the mineral copper. So
you mean the gout is excess of copper or not enough?
DAO, D-A-O, the
I'm sorry.
The diamine oxidase cofactor is copper. And a lot of times we have copper imbalances, which mean we could have an excess at the tissue, deficiency at the blood for multiple reasons. And I'm sure you can have a whole show on just that alone, on copper metabolism. But a lot of people were, oh my God, MTHFR. No, look at the methylation. And one of the best ways you can support the SAMe cycle without adding insult is to use creatine. Creatine, not monohydrate, but creatine bounded by
phosphate.
Phosphate would be good, but creatine, the one that's bounded by the creatine bounded by magnesium glycinate, works very well. And what that does is 70% of creatine's function is to produce SAMe. 30% is to produce phospholipids. So if a person has a COMT gene expression, then what I'll do is I will hesitate about going to SAMe right away, and I'll use creatine and phospholipids to conserve the SAMe And 9 times out of 10, this saves people money because SAMe is very expensive, and it saves a lot of people having to have negative responses.
And creatine has an intrinsic value, and that is that creatine is produced in the body, and it spins off. What's that inflammatory marker? I got homocysteine. I had histamine stuck in my brain. I'm like, no. It spins off homocysteine. So by taking creatine, your body doesn't have to produce creatine, and homocysteine levels drop. And people they'll go to their doctor and say, oh, my doctor said my homocysteine levels are high. That's an independent marker for heart disease. Take B12, take B6. No, take creatine, and you won't have any histamine anymore because your body won't need to produce creatine anymore.
Exactly.
Simple stuff, right, Shawn?
Simple stuff goes a long way. Foundational, without the minerals, these enzymes and pathways just don't work.
So let's talk about something else when we talk about histamine, right? We live in a world today where everybody has an autoimmunity. I mean, most of the diseases we see today, rheumatoid arthritis, even osteoarthritis is being attributed to an autoimmunity, not to mechanical loading of the skeletal system. And when we talk about autoimmunity, we talk about an immune system that has stopped serving us and has started to hurt us. Mm-hmm. Could this excessive histamine response be one of the canary in the coal mine that autoimmunity is just up the road now?
We have to look at factors that actually trigger the mast cell activation itself. And when we look at histamine, we have to look at how it's released and how the body detoxifies it. What you're starting to see, Carl, is you're starting to see the environmental impact, specifically mold, is one of the biggest nemesis in histaminic responses. A lot of people, once I get them out of the mold and clear out the system of mold, support their histaminic responses. Their mast cell activation, or MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, stops or decreases. So we have to look at, heavy metals also can drive up histamine. Mercury is a major one that drives up histamine.
Amalgam fillings. Amalgam fillings.
Amalgam fillings.
You know what all of this is? So when you're in reproductive age, the body is amazing at overcoming the challenges. I mean, it's like the guy on Ed Sullivan show, spinning plates, got them all going. It's great. As you start to age, these things, because this is why people say, well, I used to be able to eat that. Oh, I never used to get that response when I drank that. It's because your body is now reaching a point where these things that your body was doing a really good job at managing, it just can't manage them all anymore. The truth is that it never could manage them, but the body has a way of holding its stuff together through the reproductive ages, because that's what our job is, to have babies and die. And so reality is, you're laughing, but it's true, right? I mean, forget about Maslow and his theory of hierarchy. We're supposed to be born, have babies, die in that order. Those are the cellular edicts for our body. And so the reality is that most of these people who are starting to develop symptoms, their bodies have been under siege from an immune response for a long time, but the body has been able to handle it.
Right. And that's a really good point, because what happens is I refer to it as the straw that breaks the camel's back. And that's when that gene expression starts to happen. That expression could be, vaccinations are in our system for clinically sometimes up to several decades. I don't know the exact studies, but I saw even one person suggest that has been 40 years that vaccinations can stay in her system. We have mercury fillings that have been put in our mouths that have been decaying over time, causing problems. So, our environmental insult is probably one of the biggest contributing factors to the histaminic responses. And then along with all the environmental responses, all those environmental responses are just going to wreak havoc on your gut. I mean, if you got glyphosates coming in, if you got these other endogenous toxins, your LPSs are going to be increases, your lipid polysaccharides are going to increase. That's going to open up the door by increasing zonulin levels, zonulin levels then increase, opening up the door to intestinal permeability, and then you just become this one big vicious cycle where you've got the environmental toxins feeding the bugs, then the bugs turn back and prevent the body from returning back to homeostasis. That's why one of the biggest factors that I use in histaminic responses in that have been clinical research is bovine immunoglobulins. Serum bovine immunoglobulins actually bind to the antigen within the GI tract and contains the immunological response to the food or the pathogens, so it doesn't get to the systemic response to activate the mast cells. So bovine immunoglobulins have been phenomenal in containing the blow. Those bovine immunoglobulins have also been shown in clinical studies from endurance runners to actually lower zonulin levels.
Wow.
So,
and we're talking about a good high quality of colostrum.
You're comparing apples and oranges. What happens with the colostrum is colostrum contains a lot of the colostrum is not good for people that have lactose intolerance or even casein. The bovine immunoglobulins are directly derived from bovine, which is cow. So this way, there's no allergic reactions. The studies have been shown. My wife, who's a nurse practitioner, who's my wife, did her thesis on bovine immunoglobulins and how they work on Crohn's, colitis, IBD. I even have reported anecdotal evidence from immunological responses from gluten that got resolved within 30 to 60 minutes of having these episodes.
Okay, so are these capsules? Is this an injection? How do you take bovine immunoglobulins?
Serum bovine immunoglobulins.
Immunoglobulins. I'm sorry.
They come in. They're powder. They're capsules. They cannot be injected as of now, but there are very respectable brands out there that are good, that are currently being researched. The medical drug are the medical food has a component, has a product from a drug company called Interrogam. Interrogam is bovine immunoglobulins.
Enterically coated, I would imagine, right?
No, they're in a powder form. The only problem is they contain sunflower lecithin, which is which is GMO modified, of course. And I think they contain dextrose, which I found dextrose actually comes from corn, which can be a problem. People have cross-reactivity to corn. Right. I found that in one case. And once I switched them over to the bovine immunoglobulins, that a company actually paired with a natural company actually compared, Orthomolecular actually combined with the Trump companies to have the rights to provide the raw material for the actual same stuff they use in Interrogam. And they have a product called SBI Protect that's really good. And also Microbiome has a really good product out that works very well. I believe it's Mega IgG 2000s. Studies have shown anywhere between 2.5 grams to 5 grams up to 10 grams can be beneficial. It doesn't matter how or when it's taken to be therapeutic use. But these will probably be the stable in the next 5 or 10 years for cases of dealing with IBD, Crohn's. I've got a couple people now that are doing bovine immunoglobulins with BCPM 157 to try to help heal the mucosa barrier from those conditions.
You've got to add LL37 to this discussion, because LL37. So I used to get very red on my chest, red skin. This is when my gut was its worst. I had a distended stomach. Everything I ate bloated me, and I used to get very, very red on my chest. I've done 2 cycles of LL37. The redness is now just up here, but it's almost all gone. My stomach is completely changed. I have a funny feeling that that this would benefit a lot of people. I want to ask you one other question before we take our next break, and that is, I had Ben Aarons on the show earlier this week, and he was diagnosed with both multiple sclerosis and eventually it was Lyme disease, and he grew up in Long Island, and it all makes. Do you know Ben?
No, but I know the sequence. I see it all the time.
Okay, so let's go back to the histamine response for a second. Are these people who develop, because we established in that show that there are people out there who have the Lyme virus, but they never have any symptoms. So clearly their immune system is capable of keeping it in check. So is there some sort of common thread with people who seem to have a histaminic response and then eventually developing Lyme disease?
That's a really good point. Again, as you mentioned, the immune system is like a cage. It keeps the viruses, especially like EBV, Epstein-Barr, Lyme, co-infections contained, because we've been with these organisms and lived in symbiotic for millions of years, data has shown. And it's like all of a sudden, it's like, why are we having problems? You know, it's because our immune system, which has a lock on it, is actually getting rusted, and it's allowing these organisms to express. And with histamines, what happens is it's just it's a building up over time until you come to that straw to break the camel's back. So people could probably be able to handle histamines, but histamines drive inflammation. And we know that inflammation drives gene expressions. And then once that combination of that hard drive, as I refer to, and you have that virus on that hard drive, which is a Trojan, once that Trojan comes awakened, it brings all these viruses and things up to the surface that were there originally, but our body was keeping them in check as Mother Nature intended it to be. So yeah, there's anything that impacts the immune system and inflammation is going to affect a person's gene expression. Specifically,
I find it interesting that so many clinicians will talk about how inflammation is the basis of many diseases, but they don't correlate that to say the immune system is the basis for many diseases, and that's because the inflammation is the army of the immune system. If you have chronic inflammation, it's because your immune system is having problems. We just lost Shawn again, but we'll get him back on. We're going to run a commercial break anyway, so this works out perfect. Stay tuned. We got more. Be right back.
Ever feel like you want something crunchy? From the company that gave us the Quest protein bar, now comes the Quest high protein potato chips with 21 grams of high quality protein and only 5 grams of carbs and no artificial ingredients. Just like Quest bars, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to superhumanradio.com and click the Quest high protein potato chip banner ad today and get ready to be satisfied. Thanks to Quest Nutrition, chips just aren't what they used to be.
Now, the #1 best-selling non-hormonal anabolic agent at PredatorNutrition.com. Progenadrex has established itself as the category killer. If you're having difficulty gaining muscle while staying lean, you owe it to yourself to try Progenadrex. 100% of store reviews rated it at 5 stars, the highest possible ranking. And today, right now, there are guys pouring their hearts out in the gym with little or nothing to show for it. Don't waste any more time. Go to PredatorNutrition.com today and get Progenadrex, the world's absolute best drug-free muscle gainer.
Did you know that the U.S. Department of Health actually patented cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants? So, clearly there is promise for CBD to help with a variety of issues. H-Hemp's U.S.-grown CBD system is fully tested for purity and safety. For daily balance, H-Hemp has the best-tasting CBD tinctures available. Their Super Breath Blast delivers near immediate relief and relaxation while on the go. And for your muscles, joints, and temples, the Magic Balm works wonders. Relax and feel better naturally with the H-Hemp CBD system from hemp.com.
Eat dessert again with the new 100% natural line of high-protein, low-carb Quest protein bars. I love lemon cream pie and strawberry cheesecake, but you can choose from chocolate peanut butter, coconut cashew, or cinnamon roll as well. No matter which one you try, you'll feel like you're eating dessert. But this is no ordinary dessert. With 20 grams of high-quality whey protein isolate, 17 grams of prebiotic fiber, and sweetened with stevia, these bars will make you feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to superhumanradio.com superhumanradio.com and click the Quest Protein Bar banner ad to learn more about these clean and delicious protein bars.
There are a few products that I believe in the way I believe in Can-C eye drops. I've been using Can-C for 6 months now, and the changes in my vision are nothing short of amazing. Wow, that's an old commercial. The truth is I've been using Can-C eye drops for 11 years now, and I credit Can-C eye drops as being the reason that I do not need reading glasses at 58 years old. Can-C eye drops improve the quality and health of your eyes indefinitely. That's why I both use and endorse Can-C eye drops. Go to wisechoicemedicine.com and learn about how Can-C eye drops can improve the health of your eyes and the quality of your vision today.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
We're back in the right order now. We're having some internet connectivity problems, but that's okay. It's not stopping this show. So my friend Paulie Giordano, who I grew up with, said that his skin turns red with any alcohol consumption. And so maybe it's not just the... and, you know, alcohol is being implicated in being a really bad actor, along with caffeine in autoimmunity. Have you read any of this literature that shows that alcohol and caffeine seem to be they seem to exacerbate autoimmunity in general?
Yeah, I mean, caffeine in general can be a positive thing, but if you lack the body's ability to break it down, it can go pro-inflammatory pretty quickly. And the same with alcohol too. If you lack the enzymes to break down alcohol, it becomes pro-inflammatory, releasing pro-inflammatory cytokines.
And this is where the molybdenum, how do you even pronounce it? I don't even want to try. That's where that would come in, right? Because it enhances that dehydrogenase enzyme to help break down the alcohol.
One of the interesting factors that I've been measuring that a lot of doctors don't measure is they actually have, LabCorp has molybdenum levels, RBC. And 90% of the population that I test just in general are coming up less than DL, which is less than detectable levels. So what does that tell you? Because I thought it was a fluke, but then I started testing other people and I started to say, wait a second, they're actually having certain levels in there that are not high, but their markers are showing up. So molybdenum is one of the levels that a lot of people aren't testing. And as soon as I see low molybdenum levels, I know that this probably has a gene expression on NAT gene expression, which has to do with the acetaldehydes, which is an indication for mold. A lot of people that have, because acetaldehydes, is what breaks down not just your yeast, but also your fungus too, and also your mold issue.
So are there any? And I want to talk about solutions for a second. So, are there any good sources of molybdenum? How you pronounce it better than I do? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sources of molybdenum actually are one of the best sources of molybdenum you can get is actually in beans itself is a natural source. Beans have the highest source of molybdenum in them. Supplemental wise, I usually recommend molybdenum glycinate. Glycinate, which is very, very good. There's products from multiple companies that have magnesium glycinate. You just got to be careful because if you have low sulfur, molybdenum will actually cause your sulfur to lower, even down. So you have people that it's like people that take MSM or high sulfur. I normally look on their, I'm not a big fan of hair analysis testing, but I do use it for some of the markers that show maybe like a sulfuration pathway imbalance, that you'll see sulfur higher and molybdenum lower. And then if that's true, I'll go and cross-reference it with like red blood cell molybdenum on LabCorp or look at whole blood. And you can, there are cases where I actually have molybdenum toxicity where people are taking X amounts of molybdenum from poor practitioner because they were trying to deal with the candida, because what happens is in the metabolic pathway, molybdenum converts the acetaldehyde into acetic acid. If you convert it into acetic acid, what that does is it allows the body to take a toxin and move it into the Krebs cycle, which can be very, very beneficial for brain fog. There was an awesome article written by, I think it was Cooter's Corner, many moons ago, back in like late 1990s, early 2000s, and they actually had people that had candida that were taking molybdenum throughout the daytime, and they did just an anecdotal, and they saw significant improvements in mental quality, energy wise.
Well, but you know what? I don't think it was just the candida. So people who have infested guts, they have certain types of molds that produce alcohol from sugar that they consume. I heard a story about 5 years ago, and I believed it immediately. A woman was stopped by a police officer because she was driving. You know the story? She was driving erratically. There was an article about it, and she blew like a 1.8. The guy's like, she goes, I don't drink alcohol at all. She goes, and so they had to take her to the doctor, and they proved that she was kept in a metabolic ward for 3 days, no alcohol, and she was blowing like 1.6. And they realized that she was so infested with this particular fungus, this mold, that it was actually converting sugars to alcohol in her body, and she was drunk without realizing it.
Right. That's why it's called, when you have candida, I call it...
Shit, we lost him again. Oh, I cursed. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have.
One of the first signs.
It's called, wait, repeat that. It's called a what?
It's called Brewer syndrome.
Brewer syndrome.
From like, you feel drunk, but again, that could be from multiple different factors. There's one case that I worked on several years ago that blood alcohol content was so high that they thought she was an alcoholic, and she actually lacked the enzyme. She actually had a gene deletion in the enzyme that breaks down alcohol. And
so our body was manufacturing it and wasn't getting rid of any of it either.
It was coming off from the carbohydrates, because carbohydrates can be broken down through the acetaldehyde pathway, and she lacked she actually lacked the enzyme, and she actually was almost blood tox. She was almost sepsis as a result of it, and nobody could figure it out. And she went to every single doctor on the face of the earth, and I said, no, I want you to go to this hospital, get your blood level checked, and her blood level was dangerously high. And then they had to work on, they had to switch out her diet to, now that would be a ketogenic diet that probably would have to be lifetime for.
Right, because she's genetically
prone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's talk real quick about recap. Why? So someone would take broccoli seed extract if they wanted to lower estrone levels, correct?
Correct. There have been anecdotal evidence from that have been seen from Dr. Kerry Jones from Precision Hormones, as well as my other colleagues, that using the broccoli seed extract has helped with major histaminic responses. Have actually helped with allergies.
In general.
Yeah. Exactly. Any kind of allergic reaction. So it's a backdoor to the DAO. It actually supports the DAO enzyme. We don't know what mechanism yet. We're still looking on that pathway. It probably's got to do something with NRF2, because I believe broccoli seed extract increases NRF2, and NRF2 has profound effects on every single biological system there is in the body, and we're still learning about it.
The other things that you talked about were, I can't think of the hydrogenase one.
Yeah, the actual enzyme called DAO enzyme. There's several companies out there that make it. One company is Seeking Health. Another company that was Swanson had them. And if people have histamine responses that are unexplainable from food, I'll have them try a trial of, I said, just get one bottle. If after one bottle you don't feel anything, then that's not your problem.
And theoretically, if you know you drink red wine and you get a response with a red face, then you would take one or both of these, a half hour before going out drinking?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a trial experiment. There's no absolutes. But normally with the molybdenum would be a preventative. If you have a hangover, it will be done afterwards.
Okay. And what about quercetin? Quercetin seems to be showing up as something that helps to
Okay.
slow down the immune response, over responsiveness.
Right. If you're going to take one supplement that's going to help with, quote, mast cell activation or histaminic responses, quercetin will probably be the top of the chain. There's another one that a lot of people don't know about that's actually hidden in the research that I found, is coleus.
For Skolin, yeah.
Coleus has been, that actually shuts down, that actually reduces the activation of the mast cell. I found that in clinical studies.
You know, coleus makes people lose weight fast. What they don't realize is that coleus shuts off the immune system's response to inflammation, which shuts off edema, which makes you urinate out like 6 pounds in 1 week. And people go, oh my God, coleus is the greatest fat loss product in the world, except it stopped working after the first week. I don't understand that. It's because it didn't make you lose body fat. It made you urinate all the edemic water out of your body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so funny. I know coleus was first touted as the great diet product. Now you know it's really good for inflammation. And the last one I want to recap on is the bovine immunoglobulins. This is an isolate. This is not a dairy-based colostrum type thing. You're talking about isolated bovine immunoglobulins people can buy.
Correct. And companies that produce that are Orthomolecular. And there's also a company that I ran into called Microbiome. Microbiome as the manufacturer of Megaspore probiotic. And that works very, very well. I've used that myself.
Right.
I've used that myself, and I've used it with clients. And if you're going after any kind of gut dysbiosis, that would be my first line of defense, is to contain the blow so the immune system does not get out to the systemic inflammatory responses in the body. And by doing so, what that does is it allows other attempts to deal with the die off more effectively and reduce the stress on the body. Because if you reduce stress within the gut, it's going to go out. It's going to reduce stress on the HPT axis.
Right.
It's going to
on everything.
Overall,
on everything. Yeah. So, in summary, in this hyperallergic tendency to develop autoimmunity population we have today, it sounds to me, from a prophylactic standpoint, some or all of these supplements we just listed would be good choices for people to take who have periodic allergic responses, whether they manifest as atopic dermatitis or eczema, stuffy nose, watery eyes, or just some of these other issues like red skin or so on. It sounds like we live in a world today that is mismatched for us. And so most people have some sort of allergic reaction. It sounds like these supplements we just listed would be good for anyone to know about.
Yeah, they would. And the reason I like these supplements that I suggested, they're pretty benign. So they won't really cause.
We'll wait for him to come back. Stay with me. There you go. So you dropped out right at pretty benign. You lost your internet connection. Start from pretty benign and go forward.
So these products are pretty benign, so they're not going to cause a major reaction with people. And one of our first priority as a practitioner is safety. Because there's too many people throwing a lot of stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
Right.
And taking a calibrated approach. But one of the first things I advocate, and to all your listeners, is think about the foundational things you can do first. Just, your water sources, making sure I have people that are, I drink water, but they're drinking out of bottled water. You switch them over to Mountain Valley spring water, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I'm getting a reaction from everything. It's like, well, have you looked where you're located at? Scorecard.org shows you where you're located at. Tells you what kind of toxins are in your area.
Where you live, right, exactly, right.
Even if it's been 2002, it gives you somewhat of an indication. So, you're doing great with your water. I had a client the other day, you're doing great with the water, but you're still having eczema. What about your shower filter? You got to think about the shower filter. Then you got to think about your home. You cannot heal in a toxic environment. It just does not work. So if you have mold, you can't get rid of it. Then you want to think about getting, an inspector in there. But with my clients that have multi-million-dollar houses, they're like, Shawn, I'm not going to do $250,000 renovation to a house. So there's things that you can do by using different mold machines that I have in my house. Because if I don't have that mold machine running, my Asperger's and my histaminic responses go crazy. My eyes start running. If I don't have the mold machines running, if I use the fireplace or the filters need changing, if I run the fireplace, my eyes start watering. All I got to do is the next day I look at the filters. I'm like, oh crap, from the VOCs from the burning, that it was at times that it has to get changed.
Right.
So I advocate the things that I do with my clients, and because you have to practice what you preach, and we can only do what we can. But your house and your environment has to be safe, otherwise you're not going to heal. Even your workplaces. I have clients and stuff that are having histaminic responses after they freaking work out. Well, upon further evaluations,
the gym that they're training at.
Exactly, their gym they're training at.
Because gyms are funky places, man. They're dirty places. I mean, most gyms are dirty. Even the ones that they have someone going around cleaning, they're still dirty, Well,
yeah, from the aldehydes, from the perfumes they're cleaning. If you get a competitor that can't lose weight, and all of a sudden they leave the state and they get better, said, you're training and working in an infested area.
Right.
And as soon as they get there, like, Shawn, why am I leaning out? Why am I losing water weight?
I'm not doing anything different. I just live someplace different. Right.
I just love someplace different. So
right.
The only thing you got to do is instead of spending all this money on practitioners, do things simple first. I always tell a client, if you're having histaminic responses and you're always constantly inside, change your environment. Go on a vacation. It's amazing that going on a vacation, Shawn, I feel so much better. I said, well, your kids came with you, so your stress levels are still there to some degree, but your environment changed. So these are people who've been to doctors after doctors after doctors, all these protocols and stuff, when I say take a vacation.
Let's plug your website first. It is matrixhealthwell.com.
Correct.
So people can go there and connect with you if they have questions that have been inspired by this interview. They want help. You can help them. I know you work with people on a distance basis, so that's where to start to reach out to Shawn Bean. Jason Lalou made a comment. I want to keep it up there for a second. Clearly Filtered. We have a special discount for Clearly Filtered. If you go to superhumanradio.net and click the Clearly Filtered banner ad, you could take advantage of it. They have everything from shower filters, pitcher filter. Their pitcher filter was compared to what's the one that advertises on TV all the time? I can't think of it right now.
Aquasana?
No, there's another one, a pitcher filter, but they put their pitcher filter up against a bunch of other ones, and they used just a simple dye. And the only one that actually got everything out was the Clearly Filtered. It's the best pitcher filter in the world, so check that out. And last thing I want to mention, right now, you can enter to win a set of 5 to 50 pound per hand quick change dumbbells from Power Block. Go to superhumanradio.net and sign up for our newsletter. If you've already signed up and you've been a member for a long time, you're already entered. But if you have not ever signed up, sign up for our newsletter. It's down in the bottom right-hand corner of the bottom of the website. We don't put it out there. There is a pop-up right now that says enter to win a set of quick change dumbbells. You can enter there. May 31st, we'll be announcing the winner of that. They're worth $619. They replace 1,050 pounds of free weight. Very, very cool stuff. Anything we need to talk about before we Brita? That's it. The Clearly Filtered pitcher compared to Brita. If you watch this video, it's on YouTube. You won't drink your Brita water anymore. You'll have to buy a Clearly Filtered water pitcher. I'm telling you, it's great. Thank you, Jason Lalou, for helping out. Is there anything we missed, Shawn, that you want to cover about histaminic response and environment, diet? I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, I think we did a great job. I mean, like I said, when dealing with these histaminic responses, simple changes can go a long way. And the problem is that we get stuck in these metabolic pathways trying to look at cofactors when in doubt, it's just we have to choke off the sources from where they're residing from and through the underlying pathology, and take in consideration the actual gene expressions that are involved, because the genetics are great because they do give us a nice map to where the probabilities lie. And then we have to see if there's other, through history and labs and other data, we have to see if those genes are expressing or not.
Excellent. Well, this has been a great interview. I'm glad we finally had you on. You and I have been friends on Facebook for a very long time. I've watched your writing. You're a brilliant guy. And actually, your brilliance is so in a lot of people's faces that I think a lot of people come out very hard against you initially, but then they realize, no, he has the knowledge to back up what he's saying, which is really good. And I know you're good friends with another friend of mine, and that's Peter Rouse. And so great work today. We'll have you back on. And tomorrow we have the Renew Life RX show with Adam Lamb. And then Friday we have the Pep Talk. We're going to be talking this Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern with Dr. Carl Page about the nootropic peptides. And one of them is actually isolated from porcine brain tissue. And I'm going to be trying it. It's called cerebrolysin. And I've heard that within minutes of injecting it, you feel it. It's like your brain wakes up. So we'll be talking about those peptides on Friday, so don't miss those. Thanks for being here today. Shawn, thanks a lot, brother. And we'll talk to everybody soon.